Most of what's written or talked about when it comes to innovation isn't. So I'm going to give you 3 simple ways to start creating a culture of innovation in your organization today. There's a lot of talk about the importance of creating a culture of innovation. But the question remains for many, what is a culture of innovation? Is it just more corporate jargon that sounds smart but means nothing? Possibly. Or is it a powerful concept that successful organizations, regardless of their industry, must consider if they're serious about long-term success? Well, since I'm shooting a video on this topic, I'm obviously taking the latter position here. And if this idea is as powerful as I believe it is, then the obvious next question is, how do I, or better said, you, create a culture of innovation in your organization? Well, that is what this video is all about. So I'm going to give you 3 simple ways to start creating a culture of innovation in your organization today. But before I do that, I want to be very clear on how I define a culture of innovation. You see, for me, a culture of innovation is an environment where team members not only feel free to share their ideas, voice their opposition, and propose alternative solutions, they're actually incentivized to do so, whether monetarily or otherwise. In other words, there's a clear upside for those who genuinely go beyond the limitations of their job description. Now, the point that I'm trying to make here is that a culture of innovation is one that ultimately encourages disruption. After all, that is what real innovation is. Real innovation is about changing the game completely. In other words, it means you have to break a lot of stuff. In particular, you have to break industry norms, traditional ideas, and outdated models. You know, the things that may have made you profitable for years, but are now just waiting around for some upstart to waltz in and turn everything upside down. That's the stuff I'm talking about breaking. So, why am I saying all this? Well, most of what's written or talked about when it comes to innovation isn't. Most of it is just a new feature or upgrade to an existing product, like an extra camera on the back of the iPhone, a faster processing speed, or, embrace yourself, an ergonomic steering wheel for a kid's gaming device. And yes, that last one is a real thing. The product description actually says, 3-color plastic innovative and ergonomic design game racing steering wheel. So I think you get the idea here. Just because something says it's innovative doesn't make it so. Now, the same idea applies here when talking about a culture of innovation. So with that in mind, here are 3 ways to create a real culture of innovation. Number 1, encourage dissent. In other words, let your people know that just because you're the boss, that doesn't mean that your ideas are the only or best ideas. Now, when you encourage dissent, you're inviting your people to bring their best to the table, to hold nothing back. See, encouraging dissent is about removing hesitancy to speak because of the fear that they'll be ostracized, or worse, fired from their position. Now, encouraging dissent is the ultimate safe space. And yes, that phrase makes me want to ram my head through the wall. But if you think about what a safe space should be, it's one where every member of the team treats each other with dignity, respect, grace, and honesty. Now, the key word here being honesty. And here's why. Lying to someone in order to spare their feelings is one of the most undignified and disrespectful things you can do to another human being. All that to say, if you're serious about creating a culture of innovation, you need a team with soft hearts and thick skin. Number 2, select for diversity. Nothing makes an organization more vulnerable to outside disruption than uniformity. Now, by uniformity, I'm specifically referring to groupthink. Now, you're not going to be able to encourage dissent if everybody in your group thinks the same way in the first place. For instance, you may have a culturally diverse team, but if this team all graduated from the same business school, then there's a good chance that they all think the same, which means they'll probably be the most agreeable group of people you have ever worked with. However, this will not create a culture of innovation. In fact, it will do the exact opposite, especially if everyone agrees that business as usual is the best and safest path forward. Number 3, convert competitors. Now this may seem a bit counterintuitive, but what better way to get out ahead of disruption to your industry than to be the one who's initiating the disruption? Think about it. Your industry, no matter how successful it is or has been, well, it has vulnerabilities, it has blind spots, and obvious weaknesses that make it ripe for disruptions. Because until those vulnerabilities, blind spots, and obvious weaknesses have a direct impact on revenue or shareholder profits, well, they're not important enough to address. But what if you and your team decided to address those issues now rather than waiting for them like everyone else? And one of the best ways to put this into action is to get your team together, identify your top 3 competitors, and look for ways to make them your customers. Now, the way to do this is to start by getting really specific on what your organization does far better than competitors. If it's customer service, then get specific on the how and the why this makes you stronger than them. Now, once you've gone through that process, you can explore ways that you could turn that strength into a product or service. This is what a culture of innovation looks like in action. So there you have it, 3 ways to create a culture of innovation in your organization. Number 1, encourage dissent. Number 2, select for diversity. And number 3, convert your competitors.